Tony from NNNCo. I'm the CTO and COO, as you point out, Christine. I come from probably 20 to 25 years worth of RF, microwave, and telecommunications network background. So by means of that, a couple of years ago, I decided I was a bit tired of putting in yet another internet connection for people. And through some changes of fortune, ended up working with NNNCo on what's been a tumultuous and yet very exciting ride into the forays of IoT and particularly LoRaWAN. So, in effect, NNNCo is a LoRaWAN operator based here in Australia, albeit with some global aspirations, and that's coming to fruition at the moment. We see ourselves very much as a LoRaWAN IoT enabler, and by that I mean we run a network using obviously a carrier-grade, enterprise-grade network topology, but also we implement that and deliver our services over our middleware platform called N2NDL, which is an aggregation layer to provide an easy way for our customers to get access to their data and to mitigate the complexities of trying to do this with multiple integrations from multiple platforms. The tagline on that platform is really any device, any network. That's sort of, in short, where we're up to.
Okay, and a little bit about your own kind of background and you as a person and the kind of skills that you have to do that.
Okay, sure. So, well, as I say, I come from a network operator background. So I've been operating telecommunications networks in the wireless space, particularly for 20 to 25 odd years now. So probably built in the order of 20 to 30,000 microwave links with myself and my teams over that time. Point-to-point, point-to-multipoint services in just about every frequency you can imagine, from few hundred megahertz up to 90 gigahertz and laser beyond that. So I come with a breadth and depth of experience around wireless technology particularly, but also operational technologies and operational functions within business. So I'm very much about automation, proceduralization, and innovation. So by that I mean I always focus on something. If I have to do something more than a couple of times, it's got to be automated. I'm really get tired of doing things manually very quickly, and it's a very inefficient way to go. So I spend most of my time on an operational sense, ensuring that I've got a way to make efficiencies, both for ourselves but also for our customers.
Well, that's a great segue, because you touched on a couple of really nice things there. And I think the NNNCo kind of purpose, like you've focused in on something which is really a big need at the moment, actually finding a solution, actually having a solution, not just a product. Can you talk a little bit about the ecosystem and how you got to that point of really understanding that that was the big need that you needed to address?
This is all about end-to-end DL from my perspective. So, excuse me. The bottom line for us was when I joined the business a couple of years ago, it became very clear to me. I literally joined the business and said, great, show me some of this IoT stuff, right? Pretending I knew nothing, and I pretty much knew nothing. So they said, great, here it is. We have a network server, we have gateways, we have some data coming through, and here you can see some payloads. And I said, well, that's very exciting, isn't it? And I said, well, hang on a minute. How do our customers... Exactly, right? I said, how do our customers get to use this device? How do they get benefit? Where's their business value from this purpose, from this process? And then we realized very quickly that delivering a payload in and of itself really didn't help anybody very much. And so very quickly we realized as a network operator that where we can bring the greatest value is to both sides of the ecosystem. So because we live in the middle, as in the network delivery, we don't want to be in the world of manufacturing devices. We leave that to the experts like SensorGera. We don't want to be at the application end where we pretend that we are application experts around a particular use case or a solution set, which we are not. What we are very good at is building networks. And so what we realized was the most important part is aggregating the ecosystem from across the world and building relationships at a great depth so that we can understand the use case and then deliver an appropriate delivery mechanism between our network and the applications provider. And as an end result, what we found was many of our customers have a need to aggregate devices from many different solutions providers. So Sensorterra as one has a specialized application sense at the moment around soil moisture and moisture contents in the earth. And as a result, they are experts in that space. But that product, standing in and of itself, needs to be used in concert with other products. And so what we wanted to do was find a way to bring together those varied and many solutions providers together in a single source without them having to compete with each other, because that's also a problem, but also bring that through and deliver that to the customer in a way that the customer has a single point of entry and a nice harmonized method to get that data. And so from my point of view, having the ability to, and so important from my point of view, is having an ecosystem of device manufacturers who are experts in their field, who have good quality products and an innovative approach to feel like they have a method to quickly and easily get to the market. And we hope that the way a little bit of a unique way that we're actually building our network topology enables us to provide that value back to not just the customer, but also to the device manufacturers and solutions providers. Because without the devices, the network is nothing.
Very well said. I think it's a very complex system here, and being able to see that and being able to understand where your value is and other people's value is a really important kind of piece of that puzzle. So if we now kind of take a big step back and kind of try and say, okay, well, let's take a lot of your learning, your approach, and the kind of the business model almost that you have generated in your space, and you take a big step back and you look at the broader ecosystem and people who are looking to get into this space for the first time. And what I'm looking at is more the businesses who know that they want to digitize, they know that this is a direction of travel. Maybe even this COVID situation, they're thinking more about, okay, we need to digitize, we need to understand, we need to have a bit more data, be less reliant on people. And what do you see for people who are coming into this space, who are thinking about making investments in this area for the first time? What should they be looking out for? What are the kind of pitfalls or issues?
Yeah, it's a good question. The industry is still evolving and will continue to evolve over time. There are two parts to that. You have a set of solutions providers and device manufacturers on one end of the spectrum. You've then got your network operators and systems integrators who want to get involved in the process, and you've also got the end customers. The way I like to frame it is, you think about the 4 pillars of IoT is what I talk about. And on the left-hand side of this spectrum, I talk about devices and so forth. And then in the middle, I talk about the gateway and network infrastructure, if you like, and that consists of gateways and literally a network server, or what I would call my core. And then in my view, we have a piece of middleware which is required to really harmonize that data. And in my case, that's a thing called end-to-end. And then you have the application layer. So they represent the 4 pillars in this area. The Semtech through the LoRa, and where I live in the LoRaWAN world primarily, although we have the ability to ingest data from any source, in the LoRaWAN world, Semtech being the primary IP owner around this technology, although they've licensed the technology to many other manufacturers to be able to get value out of the product and truly diversify this across the globe. They've done a good job at specifying and ensuring that we have good reference designs to refer to. If people follow those reference designs carefully and don't deviate too far from the idea and the reference designs, they will do best. So by that I mean the solutions providers, the people who are device manufacturers, there's a tendency for some of them to try and get a little bit more clever than they think they might need to. As a result, what they do is, instead of adding value at the application layer, they start trying to add value on a hardware layer.
Yeah.
This causes a great deal of complexity around integrating those devices into systems, into gateways and networks. And they also have a great deal of difficulty following and assessing the region parameters around how to use the devices in various stacks across the world. There are multiple different regional parameters around the world. Device manufacturers need to be very careful about their selection of what those regional parameters are that they're using and following, and they need to understand how to implement those systems. So I would say from a device manufacturer perspective, they need to have enough technical skill and knowledge, and not just assume that this is getting a couple of devices, throwing it in a package, and then whacking on some sort of a PC board level antenna and hoping for the best. That doesn't result in a good product. It results in not all devices being created equal.
Yeah.
It's good for the good devices, not so good for most of the end customers. That's a big problem. So the end customer who gets into this space, they've got to be careful of the selection of devices. And that means they've got to be careful that they look at the LoRa Alliance, they look at the devices which are being put forward, they look for certified devices in that world, so that there's some level of quality and standardization being attributed to these devices to enable us as operators and the solutions providers and the end customers and applications providers to be able to actually make and gain value from the process of integrating these products. Otherwise, we spend an inordinate amount of money and effort and time and disillusionment trying to get devices working when they really should be working out of the box. So I would suggest that the solutions providers, the device manufacturers need to ensure that they are as close to the standard as they can be. And I would want applications layers, and I would want the end customers to be careful of their product selection. That's really a few of the main areas. Someone who wants to invest in this space, it's about understanding at depth the kind of industrial technology and problems they're trying to solve. Where you make, I believe, money, and where you make a true difference and benefit to the world economy, which is really what we're trying to do. We're trying to help the world economy. We're trying to help the world environmental situation. That's the reality of what we're doing. And along the way, we're going to make a difference, and we're going to make some money. And that process is best achieved by understanding where you're going and putting your investment into an area which is highly focused and dedicated with a solution set in mind, with a true value proposition, an ROI, but a laser-like focused on solving a problem, not a generic thing which maybe does something which might help.
Yeah, it can solve all the problems in all of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. No, that's really nice insight, and I really like that kind of 4 pillars approach, because I think those are the kind of key pieces. You don't have one of those and the data doesn't flow. You don't have one of those, you don't measure the right thing. You don't have one of those, you don't feel the value. So it's a really nice analogy. And then kind of going deeper and deeper there into the need for standardization in order for the whole industry to move forward. So that's also really nice.
Yeah.
So if we then talk about kind of the skills and your approach, in the preparation for this, I asked you to kind of consider your own leadership style. And you've put kind of collaborative, but also decisive. And I think, could you kind of explore a little bit more about why something like those types of leadership skills in a marketplace or ecosystem right now, or the organization, is then the right kind of style kind of to help find a way forward here?
You can't have a solution for a complex problem with a single input. So whether it's a leadership style of staff or people or of an industry, we need multiple inputs from multiple locations. So let's just take the old team analogy where you've got a football team who's all trying to forge down the path to an end goal to get that ball in that net. The collaboration is, if we don't collaborate appropriately, and if the coach can't bring those people together in a sense that they know where to pass that ball, how to pass that ball, and how to integrate with each other to get that ball in that net, you don't get it there.
Yeah.
It ends up being chaos. So the collaboration and bringing people together is all important, which means relationships are all important. And that means, yes, there are going to be competitive relationships in the world. There are going to be relationships where some device manufacturers think that their little bit of IP is at risk versus somebody else's piece of IP. The way you get around that is you pick the best of the best out of all of those areas and make sure that they can work together in a seamless way like a team. That's the collaborative part. When you get to the decisive part, decision by committee never ever works.
Yeah.
So you've got to get to the point where you say, I've taken the inputs, I know what's going to work, now let's drive for an outcome. And then you bring that entire group along with you along the path. And that's what I hope, for example, that we're trying to do with end-to-end DL and with our relationships with others, is that we really don't want to create a world of competitiveness between, especially ourselves and our inputs, our suppliers, our applications providers. We want to be that glue which brings everybody together so that we can share in the data collaboration, the data sharing, but then really bring it through on a focus to the end result. And that's what I mean by being decisive. Sort of saying, this is going to work, this is a good data model, this is a good approach, and then really forging through with a laser-like focus to get that outcome. That's sort of what I mean by that.
Nice, nice. And then I think just to kind of finish off, I wanted to talk a little bit about what does success look like. So I think with IoT, there's a lot of people paint this wonderful futuristic dream of all of these connected devices, millions, trillions of them, all changing the world, and we've had a big revolution. But actually, that's still quite far away, and all revolutions start somewhere. Maybe you could talk about what success means to you or right now, and then also what success for IoT will mean in the future.
Yeah, look, it's a really challenging question. And for me personally, and I think I wrote it down for you, is that I want to solve a problem, right? My aim and my goal is to solve a problem. And that means there's a puzzle. There's something out there which has got to be resolved. And I like to bring things together and solve that puzzle. Now, to me, what that means is bringing together the likes of Sensiterra and other manufacturers to say, what are we trying to fix? What are we trying to solve? We work towards that outcome, and then I get satisfaction from that approach. What, of course, that does, however, is it builds knowledge. It builds knowledge and it builds expertise. That knowledge and expertise starts to feed back into the industry by means of experience and exposure to new markets and new customers and new use case applications, where we can now start to bring that expertise to the greater, bigger picture. So the way to success to me in an IoT industry is, of course, we all have to make money. We can't stay in business unless we make money. So making money is an important part of our contribution to the economy, an important part of the contribution to our investors and shareholders. But the bigger picture is, how do we make this thing more efficient? How do we sustain environmental conditions better? How do we monitor water? How do we make sure that maybe the people in places which don't have the best access to water quality today start to get better access to it? It won't start there, but it may finish there.
Yeah.
Making sure that people can understand how we're using energy to, yes, maybe save some money for some people along the way, but moreover, maybe we can actually reduce some greenhouse gases along the way as well. You know, things like this. I've been approached by a number of organisations to talk about and work on areas of bushfire management and early detection and management. And that happens because obviously in Australia this year we've gone through some pretty hairy times at the beginning of the year and the end of last year, with some of the worst fires that we've ever seen in this country. And I believe IoT could be part of that game. We could be part of, not the only part, but part of that game. Yeah. So success to me means solving problems, but really on a local and then a global scale, starting to really contribute to the and I know it's a lofty goal, but really starting to contribute to the environmental success and economic success, both on a micro scale, but also on a more industrial scale, whether it's agriculture or electricity production or water purity or environmental monitoring and so forth and so on.
Thank you so much, Tony. We'll leave it there. But that was brilliant. Loads of really, really rich insights. So thank you.